Today we have a global advocate for adoption with us on the show. Michelle Madrid-Branch is the author of several books, including Adoption Means Love, Mascara Moments, and the children's book, The Tummy Mummy. Links to all of those are in the show notes for today's episode. But beyond all that, if you've ever felt somehow that you don't quite belong or you don't quite have a voice in a situation, then this is the episode for you. Michelle is an international adoptee herself, and her story of adopting 2 of her 3 kiddos is soft and powerful all at the same time. She has been inducted into the New Mexico Women's Hall of Fame in 2006 and was honored with the Governor's Award for Outstanding New Mexico Women by Governor Bill Richardson, and she is the recipient of the 2004 Congressional Angels in Adoption Award. It's impressive, right? I didn't know this going into it, though. Even though Michelle is mostly doing author and adoption-related work these days, she has a background in TV and news broadcasting, which means I took the opportunity to ask her a few questions about our political environment today regarding borders and the media and how that affects adoption. Overall, Michelle has a super insightful perspective, which I know you will enjoy immensely. Let's get on into it. You're listening to Bare Naked Bravery, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Emily Ann Peterson. As a singer-songwriter, author, teaching artist, and creative entrepreneur, I encounter some really fascinating stories. I'm on a mission to reveal the depth and width of bravery and its benefits to creatives like yourself. More than ever today, our world needs bravery, unique bravery, from everyone. This is the place where you find it. There is no script or censorship today because that's how these facets of bare naked bravery are in real life. So if you're listening with little ears nearby, please know that some episodes may contain mature language and subject matter. One of the easiest ways you can share bravery with the world is to send this episode to a friend or two. Send them an email, text, or tweet. Tag them in one of my Instagram posts. My handle is Emily Ann Pete. Or leave us a review on iTunes. It takes seconds and can be done from your phone right now. Again, we need more bravery in the world. So let's be brave together. Are you ready for some bare naked bravery?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. Yes. So, Michelle, you are here with us today. And I'm looking forward to this conversation because I'm not married. I don't have kids. I'm not dating anybody, but I have always thought that the biggest, most generous act you could do as a human is adopt.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep. And I think that's just a really big-hearted, wonderful gift that you can give. So I'm not saying that's in my future, but I'm just saying I admire those that advocate for it so much because it means so much to me personally. So
thank you for saying that, Emily Ann. I appreciate and am truly touched by your openness to adoption, and it has meant everything in my life. It has changed me in profound ways. You know, being adopted myself, I'm an international adoptee. I was in foster care before being adopted by an American family. And I was in foster care in England. That was a profound, of course, shift in my life. But the most profound, without a doubt, has been adopting 2 of my 3 kids from Ethiopia and Russia. And the thing that I would say about it is that it changes you in ways that are so beautiful as you learn the true meaning of loving beyond borders and loving beyond bloodline. And what does that mean? And it really, for me, is, I think, the most beautiful and perfect, although I know nothing is perfect, but the closest to perfect that I have found in my own life, in my own walk of understanding how we're supposed to love one another.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm might cry in this episode. I don't know why, but
too.
I'm kind of feeling it right, like right up there. Talk to me a little bit about what it was like before, during, and after your own adoption.
Well, I was placed in foster care shortly after birth in England. I was a baby who was, an unwanted child. And when I say that, I don't say it out of pity or anything. It's just my truth. At the time, there was no space for me to be wanted or embraced by my first parents. They had had an affair. My mother was or is English and married and had children from that marriage. My father, who has since passed away, was single, Spaniard, and didn't want to be married. He was a bachelor, and he walked away, and my mother turned away. And so I was placed in foster care and sort of was tagged with a lot of different labels, like difficult to place, because I was darker in coloring. I wasn't a typical sort of English rose. I was definitely had my father's Spanish coloring, which I am so proud of today.
Good. It looks great.
Thank you. And I embrace who I am. But at the time, I was seen as, and I say this because it's in my foster records, I was seen as dark, difficult to place, illegitimate, some really sort of negative labels that were attached to me as a baby and as a child because of the situation that was surrounding me. And so I was adopted into an American family, which was a beautiful thing. And it is a beautiful thing, but the labels of who I was, that first me, I call it the first me, the little girl before I was adopted. My name was changed from Julie to Michelle, and a lot of things changed, but the labels that were placed on that first little girl still stuck with the girl who was adopted and was moving on to a different life, if that makes sense. And so I would say that it was hard. I struggled with a lot of shame and blame and a lot of self-blame for sure. And I was pretty hard on myself for a long time. I believed those labels. And it has been through just sort of a life journey of learning how to let go of those things, being able to stand before myself and before others. I call it scars, flaws, and all. You call it bare naked bravery. But it takes bravery, raw, real bravery, to face the things that hurt us the most, to face the disappointments that have left us really wounded deep inside, and to look at them and see maybe the beliefs that those things have molded, maybe the decisions that we make unknowingly because those beliefs, those wounds are still there. It takes bravery to face it and to let it go.
Totally.
Because you're just shedding so much weight. And to shed that weight takes really standing before yourself in the world in a very raw and real way. And so for me, letting go of the things of adoption that were hurtful, the things really of abandonment that were hurtful, in order to see the blessing of it all, the beauty of it all, and the power of it all, ultimately what I believe my true calling is, it took that process of shedding, letting go, and being brave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, when you were adopted, I don't know this, but I imagine that you and your mom, not bio mom, but your mom, have discussed like her frame of mind while she was getting ready to adopt. Mm-hmm. What does she say about that time period?
Well, she was excited because she wanted a little girl. And she had 2 boys, and she wasn't able to have children anymore biologically. My parents and my brothers, through adoption, they had been living in Taiwan, and my mother had looked into adopting there, and they couldn't at the time. And so when they moved to Europe and settled for a while in the United Kingdom, they said, well, let's look into this again. And there was a window, right? It seemed to come together at that time, in that place. And my mother was very thrilled, excited, overjoyed to bring a daughter into the family. And adoption is a very joyous process. It is a form of delivery, and it should be embraced and celebrated. But there is also there a severing of something that happened prior to the adoption. And I think as an adoptive parent myself now, I always want to try to leave my kids with the understanding that they are safe to talk about that with me, that I love their birth parents, whether we know them or not, or will or ever will. I love them, that they're a part of our family, and that I honor them. And I understand that whatever they went through, even though we may not have the whole picture, must have been a very difficult situation, because it is a very difficult thing, no matter what,
right,
to make that decision,
right,
to let a child go into the arms of someone else. And so for me, my mother's joy, I looked at it and said, wow, she's so joyful. Oh, but why does sometimes I feel so sad?
Mm.
And I didn't really talk to my mom a lot about it growing up, because I just felt like I didn't want to hurt her. And I wanted to be all that she saw me as being, is this gift in her life, this source of joy and love and tenderness. And I wanted to be that for her, and at times probably didn't do enough for me.
Mm. And those were the moments when you had that like small whisper of, why do I feel so sad?
Yes. Why do I feel so sad? If this is so wonderful, and believe me, I know that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I feel so sad and confused? And why deep down do I feel so unworthy of the love? Do I feel somehow dirty? Why do I have these feelings, and where do I go to express them? Who do I talk to? Because I didn't want my adoptive parents to feel like I was ungrateful or something like that. And so I buried a lot of stuff deep down inside of me, and told myself that that the labels that had been placed on me were probably right, because look at me feeling sad when I should be feeling so happy.
Yeah.
That I must somehow be bad, because I don't always feel so happy about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a real lonely place to be. I think anytime we feel, whether we're adopted or not, no matter what our situation is, because, on this earth, in this life, we're all going to run into our obstacles. We're all going to fall down on our knees. It's a thing we all have in common, right? We're truly in it together.
Right.
And so I think for me, I didn't voice. And it's so important to voice, no matter what you've been through, to voice it, to share it, to find someone who will listen and who will understand, who will sit there without judgment and say, I hear you, and your feelings are valid. Now let's work through them so that we can arrive to the other side.
Yeah. Those of you guys listening will, this might be like the umpteenth million time they've heard me say this, but I'm a survivor of an eating disorder. And the only thing that is possibly the reason why I'm standing here today is because of the act of expression. And I have experienced that an eating disorder and a bunch of other different awful things in the world is really just the result or the symptom of a lack of expression, because you're in an environment that constrains you, that's telling you one thing, or putting you in a box that you don't belong in. And when you don't have an outlet of expression, that friction goes inside as opposed to outside where it wants to go. And so the only reason why my eating disorder was not as bad as it could have been was because I had music. I had a couple really good friends. I also wrote every day. And so I highly recommend to anybody that any form of expression is going to be the thing that helps you find the bravery. And expression is definitely one of the seeds of bravery, that I think if we can nurture expression, then we end up getting the kind of bravery that we ultimately want in our lives. And then this is a great example of that, for sure.
What a beautiful soul you are. You are so right. Everything you said is so poignant and real and so beautiful. But it's
Thank
true
you.
because I suffered for a long time with and I still do, but I don't suffer anymore. I thrive through it, and I've learned ways of controlling it. But autoimmunity, and it started for me in third grade, where I woke up one morning and my throat was swollen, and I couldn't get out of bed. I was in third grade, and my parents took me to the doctors, and they said, "Well, she just must be crazy. After all, she's adopted. There must be something probably up here." And I remember my mom saying, "The doctor thinks it's just mental. It's all in your head." And I remember crying. And there was so much in my head, but what she didn't understand is I couldn't let it out.
Yeah.
And so it turned into, I really believe that was the beginning of autoimmunity, and it went undiagnosed for years. And when it was diagnosed, because I'm a tracker of truth, I wanted to know why. Well, why do I have this? You just don't show up. What happened? What triggered this? And as I did my deep, self-exploration, and as I began that journey of healing myself, and through the written word, which was always how I found my place of peace, expressing myself through the written word, as I began to do it more and more and allowing myself to do it in a way that was real and brave, I realized that this autoimmune thyroid disease that I had been given was actually triggered by the fact that I had been silenced for so long, and I didn't let it out. And you mentioned the seed being planted for bravery. That's so true. If we look at our inner cells like a garden, that soil of the garden is either going to be depleted or nurtured and nourished. And when we are able to express ourselves, we begin to nurture that soil, and beautiful things begin to grow. But nothing can grow in darkness. Nothing can grow in the shadow of silence. Nothing can grow from that depleted place. So yes, you've got to find the way to express yourself, to let it out, to let it go, and then begin, I believe, that process to truly living in the way that we have been individually and uniquely placed here to live, because we all have something unique, beautiful, poignant, individual to give to this planet and to each other. And it takes each of us.
Oh, yeah.
Bravery is so important.
Bravery. Oh, I know. And that's why bravery is so unique to each of us, because there's so many other things that go into it.
Yeah.
But I think most of all, like your version of bravery is very unique to you, and that is why we need it. Right? Because we don't have that kind of bravery yet.
That's right. And your bravery, exactly.
Right.
It's so beautiful. It's like an individual, precious, one-of-a-kind jewel. If we hide it, the world never gets to see it and experience it. And we need it. We need it.
It's totally true. So let's turn a little bit to what is it like to adopt a kid? Like, now you know it first person.
Yeah. Wow. It's amazing. Well, my eldest is 14, and he's biological. I use that with my little finger quotes. And my now 12-year-old son is Ian, was adopted from Russia. And my now 7-year-old daughter, Eviana, was adopted from Ethiopia. Each delivery was very different. Russia, in terms of delivering via adoption, Russia was very different from Ethiopia. The process was different. The amount of paperwork was different. The timing was different. The environment was different. The number of times we needed to travel was different, and how long we had to stay was different. But that's very similar to real Real,
like
yeah.
biological deliveries. My mom, I'm the oldest of three girls, and my mom had completely different birth experiences with
Yeah.
all three of us. Oh, yeah.
And it's beautiful. I'm so happy that you said that because it's so true. Every delivery is different. Every different delivery is unique, and every delivery is so beautiful. And I can say without a doubt that the children I've delivered through adoption they're my kids. They were meant to be. How we came together was profound and beautiful and hard and sometimes scary, but it was so beautiful. And the fact that we formed this little tribe, this little family, is incredible. We are a family, a very international family, and we have different cultures and skin tones and all of that stuff. The things that from the outside make us look different, maybe, right? But what we have on the inside is so beautiful, and I think so representative of how there is hope and there is possibility that the world can get along, if we just honor the beauty and the uniqueness of every individual. And if we really look at each other and say, you're so worthy of love, and I'm going to love you, and I'm never going to stop, and all of that goodness, right?
Mm-hmm.
But adopting Ian, Ian was it was two different, and I can quickly just sort of compare and contrast the two adoptions from Russia and Ethiopia. Ian was 11 and a half months old when we brought him home, and he hadn't been touched very much. He laid in a crib for almost that year of life. And so the challenging part of bringing Ian home, Ian Victor, is that he was a little scared to be touched. He was a little scared to be held, and there was an emotional disconnect that I worked through for about the first year of him being with us. Now he's a 12-year-old brilliant actor, musician. He's a love sponge. He says the sweetest things all the time. He is no fear, I'm going to go out and grab life because I love living kind of guy. He's handsome and funny and an amazing human being. And then Aviana was 10 months old when we brought her home from Ethiopia. Aviana, who had been held and carried in a little backpack on her caretaker's back and had that sort of physical connection and that emotional connection, Aviana just came to us very sick. She was malnourished, and she was very sick from Giardia. She'd been exposed to unsanitary water, and the Giardia was tough, and it was hard to get rid of once we got her back here. She was diagnosed as failure to thrive because she wasn't getting any sort of nourishment. The Giardia was taking it all from her. Mm-hmm. So she was tiny and emaciated and weak. Now she's 7 years old, and she's mighty, and she's smart, and she's beautiful, and she's fun. She's an incredible girl, and I'm so grateful to be her mom. I will tell you, when I was on the ground in Ethiopia, Aviana had been abandoned in southern Ethiopia as a little baby, and she had been found and then retrieved by a police officer who gave her a name. There was no information attached to her. And the name he gave her was Tiblet, which is her middle name today. And when I was in the orphanage, I asked, well, what does the name Tiblet mean? And they said it means let her be greater. And it really probably was the beginning of my walk to bravery. I mean, true bravery, like not faking it bravery, is when I realized that a stranger had given my daughter a name that was like a crying out to the heavens, let her be more than this circumstance. Yeah. And I realized that that was a pretty good message for me and for all of us, to be more than the circumstance that surrounds you, and believe in the beauty, and to believe in your own greatness, and go the distance until you're living that authentically each and every day.
Yeah, and you can take let her be braver as a statement.
Yes.
But hearing it as a pleading is also so powerful.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. To think that he was holding her and gave her a name, by the way, that's not a typical name that you would find in southern Ethiopia. I'm told that it is a name that you would find in northern Ethiopia. So perhaps the officer was originally from the north. I don't know. But he's in the south, and he gives her this very unique name for the geography or the region where she is physically. Let her be greater. And this name is just asking, let this child be more than being here alone on the streets. Let her be more than this. And you have those moments, Emily Ann, when something is said or something happens and you just realize, wow, this is bigger than me. And I was supposed to hear this. And sometimes I know in my life, I've needed to be sort of hit on the head with like the frying pan, like, wake up. And I realized in that moment, I need to wake up, because I'm not here just to, and success for me in the past, like I was a television news journalist, I was Emmy nominated, I did all those things, but I realized that I did a lot of those things because I was so afraid. It was easier for me to build a persona than the person. And so I hid behind some of those accolades because I felt like it made me worthy, or at least I could show the world that, look, I'm supposed to be here, even though deep down inside I feel like I'm pretty unworthy. I still feel pretty low because of this past stuff that happened I've not let go of.
We are doing a 5-day bravery challenge starting May 15th, and I'm so excited about it. I want to make sure you get signed up. That is, if you are up for the challenge. And what is the bravery challenge? I'm glad you asked. Here is how it will go this time around. It might be different in the future, but this time around, individually, I'm asking each challenger to pick a specific area of life, business, or creativity. Basically, it's an area that you know you need to be brave in, and it can be really specific. So this could be sending those 15 booking requests to venues that you've been seriously avoiding. It could be finally getting around to doing your taxes. This could be knowing that you have some really difficult and brave conversations coming up. It could even be as simple as doing a different kind of exercise for the week, just to mix things up and experience something different and something new. Your bravery could even be getting back online and going on a date, and it could terrify you, or it could be really pretty much a baby step. But whatever you choose, big or small, as a group with all the other challengers, we'll go together, we'll go through some of the basics of bravery together. Each of the 5 days will have really simple assignments aimed at exploring and building bravery in your chosen area. And what you'll find in doing these little baby mini steps individually, and then at the same time as other folks, those baby steps will be easier and easier. And I promise by the end of the week, you'll have a much better understanding of how you can be brave and apply this bravery in a really tangible way to a really tangible area of your life too. Participation in the challenge is free. However, signups for this time around will close on May 14th, so I want to make sure you get in on the list while you can. Just go to barenakedbravery.com/challenge before May 14th. And if you're listening to this episode after May 14th, go ahead and get on the list for the challenge next time around. Again, you can go to barenakedbravery.com/challenge, and I will see you in there. You bring up a really interesting point of the difference between external bravery and internal bravery. You know, Beyonce has a Sasha Fierce that she puts on before she gets on stage. And yes, it's still her on stage, but the fact that she uses a Sasha Fierce persona, it enforces the external bravery, basically. But when you are both externally brave and internally brave and really basically tearing down that vulnerability wall of I'll put up a persona to make it easier for me to do this externally brave thing. Yes. But if it's just you and you are, like you said, raw and vulnerably up there just as you, that's a much different experience.
It really is.
And I'm not saying that doing something brave externally only is not a brave it's still
Yeah.
brave.
Still brave.
It's still brave. It's just a different kind.
Yeah.
And it's like not a right or wrong, just a right or left situation. So,
Right. And it's for each person, because what you say is so true. And I definitely put on my, Sasha Fierce, my, Tiger Lady, external bravery. And it suited me and it helped me along the way. And I'm grateful for it. But what I learned for me, and I can only speak for me and my walk and my journey, is that what I discovered is it wasn't sustainable alone. That I needed the inner bravery, the true, real, raw inner bravery to come in and be woven in to truly step out into the world with a different kind of, it's like otherworldly, bravery. It's like goddess bravery. It's wow. I was hungry for that kind of bravery, because I felt for me from that place, I could really start to help other people along the way. And ultimately that's what I'm here for. And I think that's what we're all here for ultimately.
yeah. Now, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know this about you before we started in terms of the TV career.
Yeah.
Which that means that how visibility works.
Yeah.
Or a lot more than a lot of us, let's say. What about your career helped make adopting kids easier?
Wow. That is a great question. What about my career helped me or helped make adopting kids easier? I think, well, from the financial part, I don't know if it made it easier, but maybe it afforded me the opportunity perhaps to do it without having to reach out and borrow, or, there are amazing people out there who put their home, put a second mortgage on their home, or they cupcakes on the weekends. They do amazing things in order to save money to adopt. And now we've got great crowdfunding and we have other tools of helping, of support out there. And I think those are great. So I didn't have to go that route. Maybe that helped. I also did have people who facilitated adoptions who maybe knew me from television news or the career that I had, and maybe access to them was a little bit easier. Maybe from my own experiences in investigative journalism, I was able to investigate things a little more thoroughly. Not that others don't do it thorough as well, but I may have had some access that helped me to choose.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I believe that your child is chosen for you, but I think that those things help. But I honestly believe too, and I'll say this about my television news career. I became it was so clear to me that I was supposed to adopt. I always thought I would. But when I was in news, the thing that probably bothered me the most is the stories that would be relayed on television within a newscast that maybe would shine a negative light on adoption. For instance, quick example, I remember a news story coming down once I was on the desk. It was a breaking news story, and a grown man had been accused of allegedly killing his parents. But what kept coming down on the prompter as I was reading this breaking news story was that this person was adopted, the adoptive son of, accused of killing his adopted parents. And adoption was mentioned so many times. And I began to wonder, why is that?
Mm-hmm.
Why would that be so important to say? So I think there were a lot of signs that were leading me to adopt, and a lot of stuff working inside of me of, I want to stand for the truth of adoption. I want to erase myth. And I think probably all of that while I was in television news sort of came together and helped me along the path to adopt, and also helped me along the path to being where I am as a voice for adoptees, a voice for adoption, and advocating in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you bring up a really interesting point. And I don't usually talk about political things on the show.
Yeah.
Just for somewhat obvious reasons.
Yeah.
However, I think that this topic of adoption and love beyond boundaries is super applicable. And you guys, I have no idea how Michelle's going to answer this question. So I could have just walked right into a big, huge mess. However, I'm going to ask it anyways. As a person with experience in the media,
Mm-hmm.
and also as a mom of children beyond our borders,
Mm-hmm.
what are you thinking right now? And how are
Mm.
you instructing your kids?
It's a hard, difficult question, but I would say that, number one, I'm an immigrant to this country. 2 of my 3 children are immigrants to this country. I'm very grateful to this country, and I consider all 3 of us to be American. We also have this beautiful heritage from our native lands, but we're immigrants. And so this is a nation of immigrants. It's a nation that once said, give me your tired and your poor and, in your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. It's a nation that opened its arms to the weary. And I am hugely against stopping that. And I'm also against fear. I think that fear is evil. When we begin to look at each other and decide who that person is because the color of their skin or the way they speak or whatever it may be, we are heading into a very dangerous area and a dangerous way of being. And so I would say that bans, I don't believe in bans. I don't believe in borders. I don't believe in any of that, because if I did, I wouldn't have the children I have today.
Right.
And I wish that all governments could take a long, hard look at international adoption, although it's not perfect. And although bad things happen, if you look at how families of international adoption, for the most part, carry themselves in this world, it is an inspiring thing to see. And I think it's from the way, if I look at television news right now, I think we're in a little bit of a frenzy, and it's hard to know what to believe. But I stand very firm on solid ground that bans and borders are not the way to go. That's not the answer. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can answer it however you want. And yes, that answers my question.
That's truly what I believe. I think about the child, the mother, the father. I think about, in places, going through experiences that we've never even had to contemplate, and they just need help. And so to say that one group of people is bad or should be looked at and scrutinized and with extreme whatever, that's not love to me. That's not where love lives. And so I won't live there either.
Yeah. I mean, I know that now, since we're now talking about present day stuff, you are pretty much a badass advocate for adoption and all of this stuff. Yeah, you are.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about what you're up to these days. Like, what are you working for now?
I am thank you for saying that. You just made my day, by the way.
Well, I'm just taking note of what I see around. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. What I want to do, I want to take the conversation of adoption and I want to expand it beyond its borders. I want each of us to take a look at the things that make us feel abandoned in our lives, the things that make us feel voiceless and unworthy in our lives. And so where I'm at right now today is I'm writing a 4th book. And this 4th book is based on my experience of being in Ethiopia, holding my daughter for the first time in my arms, learning of the meaning of her Ethiopian name and how that impacted me along the walk to living a true bare naked bravery. And writing this book in a way that I take the conversation of adoption and I expand it to the very themes that we're talking about today. Because whether you're adopted or not, there are situations that have happened to you. There are things that have been said, labels that have been placed that have made you feel lesser than. I would like, through this book and this current message, to help people understand the greatness they possess and how to rise up and be greater than all the things that they believe in the mind are keeping them down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the focus of this new book. And it's really directed to women because I believe in women. I think we're incredible. And I believe that we bring something to the world that is so unique and so precious. But when we are silenced inside, when we're subdued, we can't give what we have to give. And I'd like to be part of the rising up. I'd like to be part of the awakening with this new book.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I am today.
Cheers to you.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers to you.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that's so fantastic. So somebody is curious about adoption. Where should they start?
Online is a good place to start. And I would say a reputable place to start would be adoption.com. It's kind of the granddaddy of adoption information. You're sort of one-stop shopping. And again, it's highly reputable. Mm-hmm. You could start there and understanding what is the difference between, obvious differences between international adoption and domestic adoption or private adoption, but also sort of the nuanced differences. What feels right for me? Is adoption really for me? All those questions that one needs to ask in being bare naked and brave when they are approaching the thought of adopting a child. And just to go in with as much information as you can, when you then maybe make the next step to contact agencies or foster departments in your own community or whatever sort of sources you want to reach out to, that you go in feeling that you have quality questions to ask and that you know what is right for you and your family. That's a great place to start. And then I would just also sit in those quiet moments with myself and journal. Why is adoption feeling like a choice for you? Understanding the internal workings of why you think you want to deliver in this way is just as important as understanding the external workings of how it's done. Mm-hmm. And I think probably those internal workings are what you want to have shored up first. Mm-hmm. Because once you commit, you don't know where your child's going to be. You got to be ready for it. Right. Emotionally, spiritually, all of that good stuff. Be ready for it and then go. And then understand, because people will say to me, but it seems so hard. Well, nothing worthwhile is ever easy, right? And if you look at every piece of paperwork, if you have to travel, a court date, just look at it as those labor pains and focus on the child, because your child will be delivered into your arms someday, and all of that other stuff, it'll fade away, just like it does in physical birth. You forget the labor pains. You're holding your child. Yeah. Focus on the child.
Yeah.
Always.
And if you are interested in hearing another story from one of our other guests, Bridget Mayer was on the show previously, and she and I talked all about like the starving artist myth, but she got started as an American foster kiddo who was adopted later on in life. And so if you guys are interested in listening to that, you can go listen to a previous episode. But I highly recommend just getting to the root of the why before you start seeking out some of the external hows. That's a really important step. So
the why is the root of everything. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why? And we skip the why all too often, and it doesn't serve us. So yeah, go to the why always first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Michelle, this has been fantastic.
Thank you.
I feel like we got a girl crush on somebody new now.
I have a girl crush too. Yay! I totally do. I want to hear your music. And let me just tell you, your smile is like knockout.
Well, thank you.
Smile. It's just like I feel it all the way where I'm sitting in my closet.
Well, thank you.
I feel it, and it just is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. Well, thank you for sharing this with us. It's been a really, really wonderful time.
Such a pleasure. Such an honor. I send my love to everyone out there. I truly do.
Okay, so beyond the Bare Naked Bravery adult coloring book, which is available for download via barenakedbravery.com/color, your brave takeaway from today's show is to take a separate bit of time this week to check in with your internal bravery barometer. How is it going in there? Does your internal bravery match your external bravery? And like I said earlier, it's not like it has to match, but it's always helpful to check in with that aspect of life. We would love to hear all about your favorite parts of today's Bare Naked Bravery. You can find Michelle Madrid-Branch and myself on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all that. Just go ahead and tag us so that she and I can cheer you on and see what you're up to. And I've got links to Michelle's books in the show notes again. So if you are interested in reading more of her work, then you should check out those. Just go to barenakedbravery.com and type in Michelle Madrid-Branch, and she'll pop up. Her pretty face will pop up, and you'll be able to get all the information. And that's our show this week. Thank you for listening. I know that there is so much you could be doing and listening to this week, and I do not take it lightly that you have chosen this conversation to absorb. We really appreciate it. Both Michelle and I do. And if you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it for you, then I encourage you to review and rate the show in your iTunes desktop app or on your podcast app on your phone. The bravery that Michelle shared and the bravery that our other guests have shared, all of it deserves to be spread as far and as wide as possible. And you and I are a part of all of that. So I really thank you again and in advance for helping out with that. If you are digging the music in today's episode, that is because it's brought to you by my friends at Music Box Licensing, a premier creative music agency dedicated to finding and crafting unique soundtracks. To find out more about all the artists, musicians, and other sponsors of the show, go to barenakedbravery.com/sponsors. I'm really looking forward to being with you next week. We have some awesome things in store for you. And until then, I have one message for you. It's this: be yourself, be vulnerable, be brave, because the world needs more of your bare naked bravery.